Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It's Good News Tuesday. Let's find out what good stuff is happening out there with all the doom and gloom happening on the rest of the week. Today on Before Coffee, Ukraine war. Zelensky rules out elections. Wagner training tension special forces.
And Good News Day. Letters from 250 years ago have been uncovered.
This city turns sewage into drinking water in 24 hours. The concept is catching on.
And in more good news, our best friend the moon is still with us. That's right, but it's really deeply embedded in us as pieces of the planet that collided with Earth are still inside our core.
South Korea's Waackxxxy crowned Queen of the Street Dance style in the World Finals.
Those stories on more on today, November 7th, 2023, National Merlot Day. Before Coffee.
Okay, first news story. Remember that war that's been happening for like 600 days or whatever? Well, it's still happening, and unfortunately, due to that, Zelensky's not going to run an election this year for Ukraine. This is by Euronews with AFP. Zelensky rules out wartime elections. Now is not the time for elections, Ukraine's president said on Monday, trying to put to rest a growing debate on the issue and amid Russia's grinding invasion. In his daily speech, Vladimir Zelensky said, "Now is the time for defense, for battle on which the fate of the state and people depends, and not for farce, which only Russia expects from Ukraine. I think this is not time for elections. We must come together, not divide ourselves, not disperse ourselves in quarrels and other priorities," he added. On Friday, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said that Ukrainian president was weighing the pros and cons of holding elections. If Russia had not invaded in February 2022, legislative elections should have been taking place in October following presidential elections in March 2024. The introduction of martial law has suspended these votes. However, Kyiv now finds itself in a dilemma. Western allies, notably the US, are pressing Ukraine to hold elections. Some commentators argue this is a way of proving the country's democratic credentials in contrast to an increasingly authoritarian Russian state. Yet, there are many obstacles. Nearly 20% of Ukraine is occupied by Russia. Millions of Ukrainians have fled the country. Soldiers on the front line would struggle to vote at such an election could pose security risks. There is no room for conflicts, said Zelensky on Monday evening, while calling for unity of his people. We understand that today, in times of war, when the challenges are numerous, it is absolutely irresponsible to introduce the subject of elections in society, he added. I also agree with this. Why the hell would you risk voting in some sort of puppet elected leader? It's super easy, right? Barely anybody can vote. I'm sure there's people who can vote from wherever they're taking refuge in whatever European country they're currently asyluming in, right? And then you can just use propaganda to convince them, vote in this US corporate puppet, or vote in this Russian oligarch lover, and then what would you do? It's like, oh, and then we lost the war. What happened? Well, we had elections, and that guy was like, I'm not gonna do anything. That's how easy it is to lose a war if you just elect a new leader that has not the same plans as before. That just completely disrupts military operations because he's like, cancel everything. That's the risk, right? Not saying that could happen, but that's the risk. Wagner news. The notorious leader of the Chechen Republic, Ramzan Kadyrov, has said a large group of former Wagner mercenaries are training his Akhmat special forces. He said Akhmat, widely considered Kadyrov's private army, would be joined by fighters who have excellent combat experience and have proven themselves as brave and efficient warriors. I am confident that in upcoming battles, this will fully live up to their reputation. Wagner mercenaries play a key role in Russia's invasion of Ukraine, especially the months-long battle for Bakhmut. However, since the leader Yevgeny Prigozhin died in a plane crash after leading a brief mutiny against Moscow in June, the future of the mercenary group has been unclear. Writing on Telegram, Kadyrov said before his Akhmat forces carried out missions, They needed to undergo coordination to significantly increase their effectiveness on the front line. He said tactical shooting courses, field machines, training for snipers, machine gunners, sappers, and artillerymen were part of an extensive training program. Chechens are fighting on both sides in Ukraine. Those under Kadyrov have reportedly been used to discipline and reportedly even execute dissenting Russian soldiers, as well as intimidate civilians in Ukraine. However, analyst Harold Chambers previously told Euronews they were better at social media than fighting, questioning their real combat effectiveness beyond TikTok and Instagram footage. So there's your small, short update on what's been happening in Ukraine. Since everyone has stopped talking about it, it's still happening. There's still unlike the Hamas-Israel conflict, which is one-sided, I would argue, this isn't actually a two-sided war with two people trying to get the leverage over each other. I say two people, two nations. So we still don't forget about Ukraine. They're still fighting. Your story.
Yeah, it's really hard to have an election in a full-scale invasion. It ain't like the Civil War. It ain't like the American Civil War where you just say, hey, you states left the Union, fuck you, we'll just have an election without you.
Yeah.
Or World War II, right? England didn't have any elections during.
Yeah, they famously had Churchill the whole time during the whole war. Yeah.
But famously, their constitution, they can call for a new government anytime. But it's a whole different constitution. But yeah,
they don't have a constitution even. They have a Magna Carta.
You're getting invaded. So what are you supposed to do, right? They're going to bomb our polling places.
Exactly. So, great place to attack. Right there.
Yeah, let's just kill a bunch of civilians there, and it'll put a stop to people thinking they can vote. And then Putin wins every election. Did you ever notice that?
Yeah. Suspicious.
It's almost like it's rigged. Okay, so I'm back in history here, and Good News Day. This is from the BBC. Oliver Slow. There was a longer article on NPR. I took the shorter one. Letters from 7 Years' War opened 250 years later. Letters confiscated by Britain's Royal Navy before they reached French sailors during the 7 Years' War have been opened for the first time. So nobody, the intended recipients, never saw these letters. So it's really kind of, spooky. Written in 1757 and 58, they were sent by loved ones or crew on board a French warship but never reached them. Professor Renaud Moreau, who discovered the letters, said they were about universal human experiences. The 7 Year War was a battle mainly between Britain and France about the control of North America and India. It ended with the Treaty of Paris, which gave UK considerable gains. Basically all of Canada except Quebec, I think. Prof. Moreau, a University of Cambridge academic, unearthed a collection of 104 letters from the National Archives in Kew and said it was agonizing how close they got to reaching their intended recipients on board the Galate. The French Postal Administration took them multiple ports in France to attempt delivery were unsuccessful. The Galate was captured by the British on its way from Bordeaux to Quebec in 1758. Upon learning the ship was in British hands, French authorities forwarded the letters to England, where they were handed to the Navy and ended up in storage. British Admiralty officials deemed the letters had no military significance. Professor Moreau said he only asked to look at the boxes in the archives out of curiosity before discovering them. I realized I was the first person to read these very personal messages since they were written. Their intended recipients didn't get that chance. It was very emotional, said Professor Moreau, whose findings were published in the Journal of Annales Historiae Sciences Sociales. Professor Moreau identified every member of the Gates' 181-strong crew with letters addressed to them, to a quarter of them. He also carried out genealogical research into the men and their correspondence. They include a letter from Marie de Basque to her husband, the ship's first lieutenant, Louis Chamberlain. She wrote, "I could spend the night writing to you. I'm your forever faithful wife. Good night, my dear friend. It's midnight. I think it's time for me to rest." Researchers said she did not know where her husband was, or that his ship had been captured by the British. He did not receive her letter, and they did not meet again. with Dubosc dying the next year in northern France. Chamberlain returned to France and remarried in 1761. In another letter, Anne Le Cerf told her husband, Jean Tepsent, a non-commissioned officer, "I cannot wait to possess you." These letters are about the universal human experiences and not unique to France or the 18th century, Professor Moreau said. They reveal how we all cope with major life changes. When we are separated from loved ones by events beyond our control, like the pandemic or wars, we have to work out how people stay in touch, how to reassure, care for people, and keep passion alive. Today we have Zoom and WhatsApp. In the 18th century, people only had letters. But what they wrote about feels very familiar. There's your story on the sadness of war and loss on Good Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks. Just to remind you all that it sucks. In case you didn't already know.
Appreciate the time you have.
Yeah. Appreciate what because you never know when tomorrow they're going to be bombing your house.
How lucky you are that you have Zoom. Okay?
Yeah.
You don't have to sit there and go, I wonder if my wife still loves me. I'm off of this ship forever, never coming home. Okay.
In some good news, we have some positive news here today. Water may not be as hard to come by as people may have worried for. As the mega droughts grip countries across the globe, politicians are flocking to a tiny desert-locked African city to learn the secret to its circular water supply. Namibia is the driest country in sub-Saharan Africa, home to two of the world's most ancient deserts, the Kalahari and the Namib. The capital, Windhoek, that's Dutch, is sandwiched between 400 miles away from the nearest perennial river and more than 300 miles away from the coast. Water is in short supply. It's hard to imagine life thriving in Windhoek, yet 477,000 people all call it home, and 99% of them have access to drinking water thanks to technology pioneered 55 years ago on the outskirts of the city. Now, some of the world's biggest cities are embracing this technology as they adapt to the harshest impacts of climate change, but Namibia leads the way. How did this come about? In the 1950s, Windhoek's natural resources struggled to cope with a rapidly growing population, and severe water shortages gripped the city. But disaster forced innovation, and in 1968, the Gob water reclamation plant in Windhoek became the first place in the world to produce drinking water directly from sewage, a process known as direct potable reuse, DPR. That may sound revolting, but it's completely safe. Dr. Lucas van Vuren, who was among those who pioneered Windhoek's reclamation system, once said that water should be not judged by its history, but by its quality. And DPR ensures quality. Also, a fun fact, all of our water is in a recyclable loop. Every single water, okay? So trying to freak out about humans doing it doesn't change the fact that Earth does it. You're drinking fish pee right now, just letting you know. Cleaned fish pee, okay? It's been purified, but it was once fish pee. This is done using a continuous multi-barrier treatment devised in Windhoek during the 8 years of pilot studies in the 1960s. This process, which has been upgraded 4 times since 1968, eliminates pollutants and safeguards against pathogens by harnessing bacteria to digest the human waste and remove it from the water. This poorly mimics what happens when water is recycled in nature, but Windhoek does it all under 24 hours. This partly mimics. I said poorly. This partly mimics. I was going to say it poorly mimics. Oh no. It partly mimics it. Nowadays, Thomas Honer oversees the new Gob water reclamation plant, NGWRP. Sounds like a radio station. A bigger DPR facility built in 2002 to demand demands of an expanding capital city after Namibian independence in 1990. Honer's cabin sits just meters away from the churning affluent, nearly 500,000 Namibians. They could be drinking it by tomorrow. We know that we have antibiotics in the water, preservatives from cosmetics, anti-corrosion prevention chemicals from dishwater, Honor explains. We find them and we remove them. Honor adds that online instruments monitor the water continuously, and staff ensures that only drinking water that meets World Health Organization guidelines is sent to homes. If any inconsistencies are detected, a plant goes into recycle mode and distributes is halted until correct values are restored. The most important rule is and was and always will be safety first, says Honor. The facility has never been linked to an outbreak of waterborne disease. It's not something US can share, and now produces up to 5.5 million gallons of drinking water every day, up to 35% as of the city's consumption. Nambians couldn't survive without it, and a water shortage grips the planet. Windhoek's insights and experiences are more important than ever. In recent years, delegations from the US, France, Germany, India, Australia, Singapore, and the United Arab Emirates have visited Windhoek seeking solutions to water shortages in their own countries. Mega drought conditions have gripped the US since 2001, and the Colorado River, which provides 40 million people with drinking water, has been running out of just 50% of its traditional flow. As a result, several states including Texas, California, Arizona, and Colorado are beginning to embrace DPR. Fun fact, Las Vegas was already on a DPR system because they only have a fraction of the water from the Colorado River and they're in the fucking desert. So they were like, hey, let's start recycling all the water we use and put it back in the system. Otherwise, nobody can live in Las Vegas, and they use a lot of water because there's a lot of hotels. Troy Walker is a water reuse practice leader at Hazen & Sawyer, an environmental engineer firm helping Arizona to develop its DPR regulations. He visited Windhoek last year. It was about being able to see the success of their system and looking at some of the technical details of how that might look in a US facility or an Australian facility, he said. Windhoek has helped drive a lot of discussions in industry. Innovation doesn't all have to come out of California or Texas. Nambia has also helped overcome the biggest obstacles to DPR, public acceptance. Disgust is a powerful emotion, and sensational toilet-to-tap headlines have dismantled support for water reuse projects in the past. Unfortunately, DPR's biggest strength is also its biggest weakness, as the speed of which water can re-enter the system makes it especially vulnerable to prejudice, causing regulators to hesitate. Technology has never been the reason why these projects don't get built. It's always public or political opposition, says Patsy Tennyson, Vice President of Katz & Associates, an American firm that specializes in public outreach and communication. That's why just a handful of facilities worldwide are currently doing DPR, with Windhoek standing alongside smaller schemes in the Philippines and South Africa and a hybrid facility in Big Spring, Texas. But that's all changing. Drought and increase in water scarcity worldwide are forcing us to change the way we think about water. Now, the U.S. is ready to take the plunge, and in 2025, El Paso Water will begin operating the first direct-to-distribution DPR facility in North America, turning up to 10 million gallons of wastewater per day into purified drinking water, twice as much as Windhoek. San Diego, Los Angeles, California, as well as Phoenix, Arizona are also exploring the technology. Of course, DPR is not a silver bullet in the fight against climate change. It cannot create water out of thin air, so keep on peeing. Just kidding, that's not what they said in the article. It will not facilitate endless growth, but it does help cities become more climate resilient by reducing the reliance on natural sources such as the Colorado River. As other nations follow in Nambia's footsteps, Windhoek may no longer take the lead after almost 6 decades in the front. But Windhoek was the first, Honor reminds me. No one can take that away. This was from, who even wrote this? Let me see. I don't know if anybody wrote this. Frederick Clayton on Positive News. So, thanks Frederick Clayton for updating us on how great recycling water is. Your story.
Outstanding news. We have more planet news deep within the planet. This is from the Good News Network. Andy Corbley, who didn't write it, he just listed from other pieces, to be honest. But pieces of the planet that collided with Earth and formed the moon, are still buried deep inside our core. A protoplanet the size of Mars called Theia may have collided and remained inside the Earth after ejecting enough material to form the moon. But in an expansive new study, researchers say there's a reason to believe that Theia's impact on the solar system hasn't concluded because it's still influencing the forces of the Earth's interior having been subsumed by our planet. An international interdisciplinary team of researchers identified something called large low-velocity provinces, or LLVP, deep in the second layer of the Earth known as the mantle, which could be relics of Theia. The new study, published in a journal of Nature, offers important new insights not only into Earth's internal structure, but also its long-term evolution and the formation of the inner solar system. How our moon was formed has provided a persistent challenge for several generations of scientists. Prevailing theories suggest that during the late stages of the Earth's growth, around 4.5 billion years ago, a huge collision known as a giant impact formed the moon from the debris. Simulations have also indicated that the moon likely inherited material primarily from Theia, whilst Earth, due to its bigger size, was only mildly mixed with Thean material. Since Earth and Theia were relatively independent formations composed of different materials, previous theories suggested that the moon, being dominated by a Thean material, and Earth, being dominated by earthen material, should have distinct compositions. However, high-precision isotope measurements later revealed that the compositions of the Earth and the Moon are remarkably similar, thus challenging the conventional theory of the formation of the Moon. Professor Hongping Ding of the Shanghai Astronomical Observation, or the SHAO, has been researching this topic since 2017. Ding has discovered that that early Earth featured an upper and lower mantle of very different material compositions. Specifically, the upper mantle featured a magma ocean created through a thorough mixing of material from Earth and Theia, while the lower mantle remained largely solid and retained the material composition of Earth. Following discussions with geophysicists from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, Deng and his collaborators realized that the mantle layering may have persisted to the present day about 100 kilometers beneath the Earth's surface. Our findings challenge a traditional notion that the giant impact led to a homogenization of the early Earth. Instead, the moon-forming giant impact appears to be the origin of the Earth's mantle heterogeneity and marks the starting point for the Earth's geological evolution over the course of 4.5 billion years. Another example of Earth's mantle diversity is the two anomalous regions, the LLVPs mentioned earlier, which stretch for hundreds of miles at the base of the mantle. One is located beneath the African tectonic plate, whilst the other is under the Pacific plate. When seismic waves pass through these areas, wave velocity is significantly reduced. Previous research has demonstrated that LLVPs have significant implications for the evolution of the mantle, the separation and aggregation of the supercontinents, and the Earth's tectonic plate structures, but their origins have remained a mystery. Dr. Wayne Wan from the California Institute of Technology proposed along with collaborators that the LLVPs could have evolved from a small amount of Thean material that entered Earth's lower mantle. Though precise analysis of a wider range of rock samples combined with more refined giant rock models of Earth and evolution models, we can infer that material composition of orbital dynamics of the premortal Earth and Theia, said Dr. Wan. This allows us to constrain the entire history of the formation of the inner solar system. Written-up analysis, the research team calculated that around 2% of the denser, iron-rich Thean material rapidly sank to the bottom of the mantle, and over the course of long-term mantle convection, formed two prominent LLVP regions which have remained stable through 4.5 billion years of geological evolution. Diversity in the deep mantle suggests that the Earth's interior is far from a uniform system. Evidence such as isotope ratios of rare gases and samples of Icelandic basalt suggest that the remnants of diversity between Earth and Theia in the deep mantle still serve to shape the Earth today and can be used to inform the 4.4 billion years of geological evolution that followed the Great Impact. So there you are, more knowledge about the moon smacking in the Earth, to put it short and sweet. Long time ago, the moon smacked into the earth and left big chunks inside and stayed there. And it's kind of been staying there in one position, trying to spin ever since. And it hasn't spun. It's just been,
and it's not. It hasn't abandoned us. Other things may have abandoned us, but not the moon.
It really wasn't the moon when it smashed into us. It was a bunch of debris that eventually just collected and formed the moon in one spot. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean the satellite. That's what satellites are.
Your story. Yeah, it couldn't escape the orbit, and it's been hanging out ever since. Made of cheese. Your story.
It's made of cheese.
Completely made of cheese.
Our next story. Let's talk about cultural news. Do you like dancing? I love watching dancing videos. I can't dance at all, but I love just going on YouTube, getting into a rabbit hole of watching people who can dance really well. And in the Queen of Street Dance style in the World Finals, South Korea's Waackxxxy, so I said wacky because that's the only way I could say that, Waackxxy, has been crowned the queen. This is from Tokunbo Salako in Euronews Culture. From 16-1, when the lights went down low and full capacity crowd at Frankfurt's Festahall had their say on South Korea's Waackxxxy was hailed as the winner of the Red Bull Dance Your Style World Final, the first woman in the competition's history to take the title. History is made in Frankfurt on Saturday night. The talented whacking artist from South Korea dominated the dance floor to move the capacity crowd with her high-energy dance style and mesmerizing movements to the beat Geo from the Netherlands in an electrifying final battle. This head-to-head contest was the culmination of a year of national events involving more than 4,000 competitors from over 150 countries who have matched their dance moves to unheard tracks in competitions decided by the audience. So basically they play a random track and then that person has to just make choreography on the spot, and you win if you just make the best choreography that night to the random track you've never heard in your life. The Ultimate Dance-Off saw 16 of the world's best dancers have just a few seconds to make up their minds in muscular movements to interpret unpredictable hits from the galaxy of funk, pop, rock, hip-hop, disco, and more. The lineup was made up of 8 elite dancers who all qualified from the pre-finals and 8 invited wildcards. With no panel of judges, no planned choreography, and no pre-chosen music, the competitors needed to keep their wits while showing off their skills and stamina. After several rounds of high-step-in drama, Waackxxxy ultimately impressed the audience to take the Red Bull Dance Your Style 2023 World Champion title. "I can't believe this," Waackxxxy said. The semi-final battle was the most difficult because the Crown, from the USA, is a famous and well-respected dancer. I thought maybe I would lose because he is an amazing dancer, but when I saw I won, I thought to myself, is this real? I couldn't believe it. Thank you everyone for the support, she said. The inaugural Red Bull Dance Your Style World Final took place in Paris, France in 2019, where Dutch dancer Shin-chan was crowned the first ever winner. Dr. D. Soraki from Japan ruled the post-pandemic dance floor and captivated the audience at the Red Bull Dance Your Style Final in 2022 in Johannesburg, South Africa. The next edition of Red Bull Dance Your Style World Final will take place in Mumbai in India on the 9th of November 2024. So there's your quick but happy celebration of the first woman to win the three-year-long. Hey, that's better than a lot of other competitions, okay? Sometimes it takes 75 years for a woman to win something. The first woman to win a directing Oscar, it took 75 years of film before a woman was allowed to win a directing Oscar. So always celebrate when a woman wins early, because then you don't have to worry about how balanced the reward system is, I would argue. Because it's just about dancing. Men, women, everyone can dance. So there's no gender-specific criteria there. Hopefully, as far as I know.
And
into
you
this
never know.
Day in history.
You never know. The space aliens might invade, and they may decide that the leader that they're going to crown the leader of Earth before they leave is going to be the best dancer. Keep that in mind when you take in this day in history. This day in history in 1811, The Battle of Tippecanoe, a seasoned U.S. expeditionary force under Major General William Henry Harrison, defeated Shawnee Indians led by Tecumseh's brother Waackxxxy, known as the Prophet. Of course, William Henry Harrison later became president and really didn't do much except died because I think it was 60 days he was president because he got pneumonia, giving a speech on the inauguration, and never recovered. In 1837, abolitionist newspaper editor Elijah P. Lovejoy was murdered by a mob in Alton, Illinois, while defending his press building. In 1874, Harper's Weekly featured Thomas Nast cartoon about the possibility of U.S. President Ulysses S. Grant seeking a third term, and the Republican vote was represented by an elephant. The animal, which appeared in several other Republican-related cartoons by Nast, eventually became the party's official logo. So there you go. That's why they got an elephant. In 1913, French author Albert Camus, who received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1957 for such classic works as The Stranger, was born. In 1916, Jeanette Rankin, who won a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives, becoming the first woman elected to Congress. There you go. How many years did that take? Congress, about 126 years.
Way too long, man. Way too long.
Women
have existed throughout time, and it takes 100 years.
It's important to note that the women still did not have the right to vote in 1916 when this happened. So there you go. That's...
We've always existed, yet we never get the ability to do. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's actually ahead of progress. Her getting elected. 1917, the October Revolution, the last phase of the Russian Revolution of 1917, ended as the Bolshevik Party seized power in Russia, inaugurating the Soviet Union. In 1940, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge connecting the Olympic Peninsula with Tacoma, Washington, broke up in a wind of about 42 miles per hour. It's a pretty scary film, especially if you have a car on that bridge. Ever see that film? You see some guy abandoning his car and running like hell as the wind just whipping that thing around. 1944, Franklin D. Roosevelt defeated Thomas Dewey and was elected to an unprecedented fourth term as President of the United States. When Thomas Dewey was defeated, and about 4 years later in 1948, when the newspapers got the election wrong because they trusted the polls. Very important lesson. The newspapers in 1948 declared Thomas Dewey the winner, and he had lost because they didn't even care. They went to bed, published the story. This thing's over. They were wrong. 1962, Eleanor Roosevelt was First Lady of the United States. One of the most widely admired and powerful women, known as a diplomat and humanitarian, died in New York City at the age of 78. In 1962, also on this day, after losing the governor's election in California, American politician Richard Nixon gave what he called his last press conference, telling reporters that you won't have Dick Nixon to kick around anymore. He was elected president 6 years later. 1967, American lawyer and politician Carl Stokes was elected mayor of Cleveland, Ohio, becoming the first African American to lead a U.S. major city. 1980, American movie star Steve McQueen died at the age of 50 of cancer, famously known as The Great Escape and Bullet. 1989, American politician Douglas Wilder was elected governor of Virginia, becoming the first African American to win the U.S. gubernatorial election. First election today in Virginia. Go Blue! 1991, American professional basketball player Magic Johnson announced that he was HIV positive, immediately retiring from the sport. He didn't actually retire, he went back and played later. And he's still alive with HIV after 32 years. 1996, NASA launched Mars Global Survey, a robotic spacecraft to carry out long-term study of the planet. Contact the spacecraft was lost in 2006. In 2000, American politician Hillary Clinton was elected to the U.S. Senate, becoming the first Lady to win an elective office. 2016, Canadian musician Larry Cohen, a hugely influential singer and songwriter known for spare songs that carried an existential bite, died at the age of 82. In 2016, American lawyer and public official Janet Rito, who was the first female attorney general of the United States, died at the age of 78. And the featured event is the 2000 election. On this day, U.S. presidential election ended in a statistical tie between Democrat Al Gore and Republican George W. Bush, only to be settled on December 12th by the U.S. Supreme Court, who basically violated the Constitution and declared George W. Bush the winner when they absolutely should have stayed out of the floor to recount. Absolutely should have stayed out of it. November 7th, 1867 is the birthday of Marie Curie, Polish-born French physicist who died later July 4th, 1934 from near Sewage, France. Of course, she died famously of radiation poisoning. Whose birthday is it today? It's Leon Trotsky's birthday today. He was born in 1979. He was a Russian revolutionary. 1998, C.V. Raman was born, Indian physicist. French author Albert Camus was born in 1913. American evangelist Billy Graham was born in 19. And happy birthday to Joni Mitchell. Oh, Joni Mitchell turns 80 today. The great Canadian singer, songwriter. And what national day is it today? It is National Canine Lymphoma Awareness Day. So check your pups for cancer. Check them for cysts. Give them a good rub down. They'll love it. National Day, the National Bittersweet Chocolate with Almonds Day. That's very specific. International Merlot Day we covered. It's National Retinol Day. Retinol, what's that? We'll get back to you. International Day of Medical Physics. Oh, medical physics.
I can tell you what retinol is. It's stuff you put on your face to reduce aging. So a lot of women use it because, as we know, if you get old and wrinkly, nobody likes you anymore. So I've been putting retinol on my face. So that's what I bought in France for $200. Yeah. Retinol. That's what retinol is.
And how dare you women out there look beyond the age of sparkling 22? How dare you? How dare you?
Idiots.
Meanwhile, I'll just sit here and look like I get hit in the face with a shovel for the rest of my life. Back to you.
All right. Get in the face with a shovel.
Well,
this has been Allison here from the Netherlands, where the sun has come back just for a little bit and the trees are finally all orange. That's right, after that huge storm that didn't blow the trees off of the leaves off the trees. Now the trees finally decided, you know what, it's time for me to get the hell out of here. I'm going to sleep. Yeah, that's what they do. They just start hibernating for the winter.
Yeah.
I guess I will be putting retinol on my face, which I already did last night. Don't put it on. And staying young forever here on Before Coffee. Tomorrow's Wacky Wednesday, so come back tomorrow to find out what wacky stuff's happening.
And come back every day, because you never know what we're going to report, because we don't know. And I'm going to go listen to Joni Mitchell, which I suggest you do, because it will make you feel better. Especially if you're thinking that you're not very important. Anyway, that's it for today, November 7th, 2023 edition of Before Coffee. Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.